Hello and welcome back to the channel. After strolling through the medieval streets of Beaugency, today we head to the most famous castle in the entire Loire Valley.
And if you like our video, do not forget to like it, subscribe and activate notifications so that you know when we upload a new video.
We conclude our visit to the small but interesting medieval town of Beaugency to head to one of the most famous castles in the Loire Valley, the Château de Chambord, located within the Chambord estate, which is the largest enclosed forest park in Europe, with over 5,000 hectares of land and surrounded by a wall 32 kilometers long. Within the grounds, you have several paid parking lots, where if you are in a motorhome, you can spend the night there. And so we take advantage of the last hour of the evening, when there are no visitors, to take a walk and photograph this impressive castle before starting the interior visit the next day. The history of the Château de Chambord begins in 1519, when King Francis I decided to build on these swampy but game-rich lands this monumental architectural work, which the king showed to sovereigns and ambassadors as a symbol of his power, mixing French and Italian influences, and on whose grounds he could indulge his passion for hunting. We access the ground floor of the castle, inside which we find the double-helix staircase, a curious and surprising staircase in which two staircases turn in the same direction but never intersect, being the central axis around which the entire castle is built, and which takes us in an upward spiral from the ground floor to the terraces of the top floor. On each of the floors, we can visit several rooms, although you may find some closed for restoration. We begin our visit in the hunting room, whose use varies over time, initially serving as a bedroom, then as a public room where auctions were held, until its current purpose as a reception room, and it is beautifully decorated with paintings and sculptures recalling hunting tradition in the Chambord Park. Another of the rooms is the Hall of the Illustrious, which, like the previous one, has served several functions, and where dinners and cultural events are occasionally held. In this room, we find a series of portraits of illustrious figures from French history, mostly former guests of the castle. On this floor, we also find the Bourbon room, which went through various uses such as bedroom, kitchen, or storage, and presents a collection of portraits and busts of the Bourbon family, 7 of whom ruled France between 1589 and 1830. We then move on to the 18th century kitchens. Equipped starting in 1782, they were complemented by other areas such as the pastry, the bakery, and the storerooms for various foods, and also had temporary facilities like a chicken coop located in the castle courtyard. After the French Revolution, the kitchens were abandoned until they were restored and re-equipped between 2015 and 2016. We leave the ground floor, where we cannot visit the carriage room as it was under restoration, and via the curious double-helix staircase, we go up to the first floor. In the first floor vestibule, we find the Molière Theatre, where Louis XIV enjoyed plays after a long day of hunting. In this floor, we find the museum of the Count of Chambord, Henri de Chambord, who was the owner of the castle in the 19th century. This museum explains the history of this prince, who dedicated most of his fortune to the beautification and preservation of the castle. In 7 rooms, the history of this prince is reviewed through 100 objects that belonged to him, and the one that attracts the most attention is the throne, a symbol of his eligibility for power, although the caricatures of the time displayed here represent the political instability of the era and the rejection of the monarchy. We continue our visit to the castle and arrive at the Queen's Chamber, beautifully decorated in blue, and which apparently was the first residence of Francis I. In the 17th century, it was the apartment of Maria Theresa of Austria, wife of Louis XIV, and after her death, it was occupied by Maria Anna of Bavaria, wife of the heir to the throne as the future queen. We continue our visit to the Royal Oratory with a beautiful coffered vault, comparable to Italian Renaissance churches. We now head to the lodgings of Francis I, composed of 8 different rooms, starting with the bedroom, a large room of 80 square meters which occupied the center of the Royal Wing Tower. We continue our visit to the governor's room, which was occupied by the nephew of the Marquis de Polignac, whom Louis XVI put in charge of the kingdom's horse breeding in 1782. And we arrive at the chapel, which is the largest room in the castle and has the peculiarity of being, so to speak, Western, as it is not oriented towards Jerusalem as tradition dictates. Its construction stretched over time, beginning with Francis I and completed in 1686 under the reign of Louis XIV. In the 18th century, the castle was remodeled to host illustrious visitors, becoming the permanent residence of the relatives and high officers of Louis XV and Louis XVI. This remodeling gave rise to rooms like the Chamber of the Laurels or the Chamber of the Princess of Conti, where the most important guests stayed, taking its name from its first occupant, Mary Anne de Bourbon-Conti, daughter of King Louis XIV, and which is now displayed as an 18th century feminine chamber. Now we arrive at the so-called parade apartment, composed of 8 rooms, the most important of which is the parade chamber. But first, we pass through 2 antechambers that served as waiting rooms, the second becoming a games room in the 18th century, and which gave access to the parade chamber, probably the most luxurious in the entire castle. Here we distinguish 2 spaces. The first, where the parade chamber is located, which was the sovereign's private space, and a second space consisting of the rest of the room, accessible to courtiers and the king's family during the ceremonies of his going to bed and getting up. We ascend to the next floor, where we enjoy an impressive and beautiful vaulted ceiling. On this floor, you will find a large space dedicated to hunting at Chambord, discovering the dedication of the Chambord estate to hunting and how the territory developed to its current area. You will find representations of several of the animals that were hunted, tapestries, maps of the estate, and archival documents. You also find a curious hunting boat, which can be separated from the cart chassis and allowed navigation on water. We also find a space dedicated to the gamekeepers, of whom between the 19th and early 20th centuries there were 16 under the command of a royal gamekeeper. And we arrive at the highest point of the castle, where we enjoy impressive and beautiful panoramic views from the various terraces, where the sculpted Renaissance decoration and the verticality of the Gothic work wonders. From here, we can admire the French gardens, commissioned by Louis XIV in 1374, which covers 6.5 hectares of land. Over time, these gardens fell into disuse, transforming into a simple grassy ground, until in 2015, after several years of documentary research, they were beautifully restored, returning all their majesty to the facade. And with the impressive panoramas from the terrace, we conclude our visit to the Château de Chambord, an impressive and majestic construction, and which is undoubtedly essential to visit if you tour the Loire Valley.